Let's talk about how we hold a handsaw. It's important to note that even though these handles may look kind of like overly fancy and a little bit too decorative, a lot of these things have a purpose. This upper horn gives you a greater surface of contact with your hand when you hold the saw, so that when you push, you're less likely to have hot spots on your hand, and that's good to prevent blisters. This lower horn actually allows you to hold the saw with less of a fierce grip, so that you can support the saw without gripping it really hard. And then this bottom one here is really just to give you some feedback on your cutting. It's just one more thing that keeps your hand from slipping off the bottom of the handle. And you may notice here that I'm not putting my entire hand through the grip of this saw plate. I'm using one of my fingers on the outside here, my pointer finger, along the side of the tote. And that's actually a physical cue. It's sort of like a subconscious thing that tells your brain to cut where your finger is pointing. And this is a lot like when they were teaching my son to throw baseball. We taught him to follow through with his throw, pointing where he wanted the ball to go. And that improves the accuracy of your throwing, and that's the same thing for sawing. So you put your pointer finger along the side of the saw tote and use that as an indicator. Let's talk about the strength of the grip. I've heard this described a couple different ways. The way that I was taught was to hold it like you're holding a baby bird. I mean, you don't want it to fall out of your hand, but you also don't want to crush it. So when you hear people say, let the saw do the work when you're cutting, they're talking about the weight of the plate and the back of the saw being the thing that makes the cut. So by holding it lightly and using that horn down there to support the weight of the saw, you don't even have to grip it in order to keep it from falling down, to control the angle. You just tilt your wrist and you can change the attitude, you can change the way that it's cutting without really gripping it. So you want a nice loose grip. If you grip a saw too tight, it will turn when you squeeze it. Just try that with your own saws. Hold it nice and loose and then give it a squeeze and you'll see that plate roll over. So if you're noticing that your cuts, usually it's this way, tend to go this way while you're sawing, it's probably that your grip is too tight.